You mentioned earlier that at one point Constable Smyth was in your vehicle making some calls, you thought, to his supervisor, making some calls on his phone. Did you overhear any of that conversation?
No,
Okay.
I did not. I didn't stay in the vehicle.
Okay. All right. So, any other involvement in the investigation from you?
No, that was it. After that second day, I believe I was just placed right back on detachment duties.
Okay. So now, on April 10th, you called Constable Smyth.
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell the Commissioner about that? Why did you call him and what did you say?
Yes, I called him. I guess it was a few days after the incident. It was, I guess a very difficult incident for everybody involved. I was working that night, and I guess everything was playing on my mind, and I wanted to call and just, see how he was doing. Is the bottom line.
He had had an email that he had written to the RNC, his fellow RNC members, and also he forwarded, I know, to a couple of RCMP members. You were not one of those members who was forwarded that email, were you?
No.
Okay. Were you aware of that email when you made the call to him?
I may have if it was reported in the news, but I certainly didn't read it or see it.
Okay, so it had been leaked to the media that day. So,
okay.
Okay, so you may have had some knowledge of that before you called him? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, possibly, yes.
Okay, and were you working when you called him?
Yes.
Okay, and how did you get his number to call him?
It must have been on the file.
Okay, so you would have looked at the file, got his number, and given
Yes.
him a call?
Yeah.
And so you wanted to see how he was playing on your mind, you said. So tell me, what did you exactly say to him, and what did he say?
It was a very brief conversation. I spoke to him, and I remember that I did say to him, I said, I'm not calling as an investigator, I'm not calling as a police officer. I said, I just want to know how you're doing. It's a very difficult situation. I mean, it's been playing on my mind, and that was pretty much it. I wanted to see how he was doing, and he said, it was difficult for him and his family. I believe he mentioned that they were looking at taking a trip just to get away from everything, and it was just, it was just a general kind of a caring conversation, and that's it.
Were you aware at this time that the RCMP was investigating Constable Smyth?
No, I wasn't made aware of, other than our initial file, but I wasn't privy to anything like that.
Did you know did you understand that initial file to be an investigation?
Yes.
Okay, did you understand it to be a homicide investigation?
I wasn't made aware of what the exact type of investigation it was, no. Because, like I said, once I was done that second day on the scene, I had no other dealings with it.
All right.
So I didn't know where their focus was, no.
Okay. Did you know whether or not the investigation had been concluded?
Oh, it wasn't.
At that time?
Yeah, it wasn't concluded, no.
So you knew he was subject of an ongoing investigation, you just weren't sure of the details?
Yes.
Okay, and did you check with anyone about what kind of investigation it was before you made the call?
No, I made it all on my own.
Was that an appropriate call for you to make?
Looking back at it now, it was mentioned by my supervisors. Maybe it wasn't, but I guess at the time, and knowing, knowing what everybody had gone through, I guess it might have been just as much for me as for him. It was a very difficult situation for everybody, and I guess I just wanted him to know that somebody cared. If that makes any sense.
Sure. So you were empathizing with him. Is that
absolutely,
a fair way
absolutely.
to put it? And would that, and were you empathizing with him as a fellow police officer? I mean, was that part of why?
Just as a human being, not so much as a police officer, but I can only imagine you know, I could see what everybody has had gone through that day, be it Constable Smyth or Megan and Billy or ourselves. This was a very, very difficult situation. And, you know, I guess it was a bit comforting, you know, just to know that somebody cared. Somebody cared. And like I said, that's all it was. There was no discussion of anything. It's just, are you doing okay?
Had Constable Smyth not been a police officer, if he had been an ordinary civilian who is the subject of an investigation by the RCMP involving a shooting that he had committed, do you think you would have made that call?
Probably not.
No.
No.
So you made that call to him because he was a police officer?
Yes. You know what? Let's call a spade a spade. Probably, yes.
Okay. And now that you look at it in hindsight, do you consider that raises a bit of a concern for impartiality or a lack of independence to have a member of the investigating force to call up the subject of the investigation?
Yes.
To see how he's doing?
Yes, you know, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have called, but, you know, I guess my feelings are, you know, my emotions from all that took over, but I mean, in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have called.
Okay, every time you say that, Corporal O'Keefe, you're saying I probably shouldn't have called, maybe I shouldn't have called. You know, would you go so far to just say point blank, I should not have made that call?
No, right, looking back, no, I wouldn't have called.
Did anyone ever raise this concern with you?
Yes, eventually.
Okay, so tell us about that.
Well, I heard from Corporal Foote, was directed to come and speak to me on it and to make some notes on the file.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'll ask Madam Clerk if you could bring up P229, please. So here we have the supplementary occurrence report. So this is one that you made. It says report time, on April 10th.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's would have been when I made the call.
Okay, that's when you made the call.
Correct.
And you entered it then on May 4th.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so and you made these notes here and entered these notes at the request of one of your superior officers?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and so did your superior officer, you know, what was the discussion, your superior officer? I thought you said it was Corporal Foote who?
Yes, well, I guess Corporal Foote was the corporal in charge of the investigation section. He was speaking to staff Tiller. And I was told, you know, you should go make some notes on that phone call.
Okay. Did they raise it with you like did they say like you shouldn't have made this call? Did they raise any concern with you about you having made the call, or did you just say, gee, you made the call, you should make some notes about the call?
That's what I recall. I don't recall being reprimanded for it, or I really don't recall that. The big thing was to go make some notes on it.
Okay, so you don't recall anyone telling you it was inappropriate?
No.
Okay, that it shouldn't have been done, you don't recall that?
No, I don't recall that.
I'm just going to bring up an email. I know you weren't on the email, but just
Yes.
P231, please. Can you make that a little bit larger, please, ma'am? Thanks. All right, so this is an email on April 14th. So this is on April 14th. I understand you didn't make those notes then until May 4th.
Right.
So this is on April 14th. It says it's from Kent Osmond, who we're going to hear from, but I understand he was the team commander of the investigation.
Correct.
He's with MCU, to Staff Sergeant Rod Tiller. Hi, Rod. I know you've already spoken with Corporal O'Keefe about his disclosing information to the family. However, I was informed this morning that Trevor also reached out to Sergeant Smyth following the shooting to see how he was doing. I don't know on what day that contact occurred. So I'm going to stop right there, Corporal O'Keefe, and just ask you, do you recall having been spoken to about you disclosing information to the family?
I don't recall that. I don't recall that conversation.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you recall what the concern was? I mean, had you spoken to the family any other time than that evening on April 5th?
No.
Okay, so when you made your call to Constable Smyth, you didn't also make a call to Megan Dunphy to see how she was doing?
No.
Okay.
We had a family liaison assigned at that time.
And it says then, I have directed Corporal Foote to have Corporal O'Keefe draft comprehensive notes on that contact as it was not previously known to the investigative team and not appropriate. I understand that we are all human beings with feelings, and this was no doubt done with the best of intentions. However, the RNC were completely plugged into the MEAP side of things, and I think that's employee support.
Member Employee Assistance Program.
Okay. And the optics of a first responder, the file speaking to the person under investigation, should have been a common sense issue and should not have been done. I'm raising with this with you to ensure the notes are completed immediately so that you can assess how you wish to deal with this issue as his supervisor. Right. So you're saying that after that you got a message to basically make notes, but you don't recall any reprimand. You don't recall anybody telling you, "Oh, Corporal O'Keefe is you know."
No. And if there was, it was a very small conversation. I like I said, it wasn't. I wasn't hauled in, doors closed, and people pointing fingers at me. There was absolutely none of that. So I certainly don't recall it.
I know you went over, when you started your testimony, you went over the training that you had. I know you said you had not previous to this date received any training in related to, I think, investigating police use of force incidents. Am I remembering that right?
That's right, yes.
Since that date, have you received any training since?
No.
No follow-up?
No.
Okay.
No training, but I've learned a lot.
Okay, I just have a few, that's good. I just have a few more questions for you, and I may actually finish before the lunch break. I noted that your notes in your logbook and your typed notes, I think we reviewed that. You made your notes in your logbook the day of, on April 5th, the ones that we reviewed, and your supplementary occurrence report were made some 5 days later on April 10th.
Yes.
Okay, and now we know that the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, otherwise known as ACERT, did a review of the RCMP's investigation and ultimately prepared a report. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. And I understand that I'm going to ask Madam Clerk to bring up P232, please. If you could make that a little bit bigger. I'm just looking at an excerpt from that report, Corporal O'Keefe. On page 8 of that report, it says that Corporal O'Keefe was one of the first RCMP officers on the scene that the subject officer presented himself to upon arrival. The notes and subsequent prose report were provided by Corporal O'Keefe documenting his encounters and discussions with the subject officer are extremely limited and respectfully inadequate. When did you first learn that, this is a criticism of your note-taking by ACERT, would you agree with that?
Yes.
When did you first learn that ACERT had made those statements?
I guess it was approximately an hour before the report was released.
An hour before the report was released by whom?
Before it was released to the public.
By the Commission?
Yes, or the Commission, yes.
So just before the Commission of Inquiry was going to make the ACERT report public on its website, just an hour before that, someone brought this to your attention?
Roughly, yes.
Roughly, okay. And who was that who brought it to your attention?
That would have been Staff Sergeant Osmond. Came in and told me.
Okay, and what did he tell you?
He told me that my name was going to be in the ACERT report, and it was with regards to improper note-taking.
Okay, so up until that time, had anyone ever come to you and said, Corporal O'Keefe, your notes were not adequate?
No.
No one had ever raised that concern with you before that?
No.
Okay. And your notes, your notes have been disclosed in the ordinary course to, to the lead investigator? Would you have
Yes.
submitted your notes into the
Yes.
PROS system?
Correct.
So your notes would have been there for the primary investigator, say Corporal Burke, to review?
Yes.
And your SOR, your type notes, your supplementary occurrence report would have been in
Every
the
note that was made would go onto the file.
would have
yes.
been in the system for them to review?
Yes.
Okay, and the concern wasn't raised. On August 31st, 2016, you were interviewed by a fellow RCMP officer about about April 5th, 2015. Do you
Yes.
recall that?
Yes, Constable Fudge.
Constable Fudge. And so that happened about 15 months later, after the incident, right? The incident happened on April 5th of 2015. So I'm just going to ask Madam Clerk to please bring up P227. Had you ever previously been interviewed by a fellow RCMP officer about your involvement on a file?
No, not that I can recall.
Okay. And did you know Constable Fudge?
Yes.
Okay. And did he tell you why he was coming to take this statement from you?
He called me and he explained that ACERT had some questions that they wanted answered, or I don't know if it was ACERT or major crime, but they had some further questions based on what happened that day, and he just wanted to get some clarification.
Okay. So you just gave him the details we see here, that you were the first supervisor on the scene, you had the first conversation with Smyth. Smyth told you there was a firearm pointed at you and that he shot Mr. Dunphy. No other utterances were made?
Yes.
Okay. That you'd seized the firearm, that you'd locked the pistol in the car, unsure there was a clip in the pistol or not, did not eject around from the pistol when seized. So you remembered that at that time you hadn't ejected around from the pistol?
That's what I thought, but as I said, if you speak to the exhibit custodian, it might be able to clarify that a bit more.
Okay, and you felt his demeanor was disbelief and that he was placed in a PC unit and transported back to Holyrood Detachment. So those were the details that you gave Constable Fudge on that
Yeah,
day?
I think it was a bit longer than that, but
Is that's the summary of it? Fair enough.
Yes.
So did you, you said they were coming to get more information. Did you understand, or did anyone say we're coming to get more information from you because your notes were really not adequate?
No.
No.
Nobody ever said that. They just said they wanted more information. And
Did you ask?
I obliged.
Okay, yeah, understood. Did you ask why?
No, because that's how it was explained to me, that there were still some outstanding questions, I guess from either ACERT or major crime portion, and they just had some additional questions. That's all I understood, and I provided the information the best I could.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner.